Hi everyone, it's Kerry Jeffrey here from emotionalautoimmunity.com, navigating the emotional side of living with chronic illness. And today I'm really excited to be speaking to Kacy Anacan of Sisters Undercover. And I'll tell you a little bit about Kacy before I start talking to her, and you and I can both hear what she has to say about life with chronic illness. So Kacy Anacan produces a blog with her sister called Sisters Undercover. She is passionate about bringing only the best to the forefront when it comes to healthy living. Kacy has a strong desire to share her emotional and spiritual journey of living with chronic illness for the past 13 years. So Kacy, welcome. So excited to have you here.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks, Kerry. I love it. It's fun. I'm
Fantastic.
ready.
Yeah. So, Kacy, can you tell us what health issues do you have and how do they affect your day-to-day life?
Okay, I got a laundry list. On the autoimmunity front, I've got psoriatic arthritis and hidradenitis, and I've got fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, adrenal insufficiency, MTHFR, SIBO, and God only knows what else is lurking in there. But those are on polycystic ovarian syndrome. So I've got a lot of layers. Occipital migraines. So yeah, lots of layers. So it affects my day-to-day life in a huge way. I mean, I say that list to you and I'm like, how do I get up and move every day? But I'm grateful that I do. But it does affect things. I have to, plan and be super mindful, and I've got to take care of my life or my health so much more. So, and I totally didn't do that before. So those are the big changes of just organizing my life and taking care of me.
And that's a lot of issues. Has that been the whole 13 years? I mean, how did it start out for you?
It started out for me, I had a flu in 2000, at the end of 2003, and I never really got better. And I started having a lot of panic attacks, a lot of adrenal issues, but I didn't get any diagnoses until after 6 years, because I kept going to doctors and they're like, your blood work's fine. And I'm like, I had to quit working full time. I was just a disaster. So I've been battling these things for 13 years, but didn't really know until about 2010, some of what I was dealing with. And then I picked up some other ones along the way. So, yeah.
Yes. They are friendly little beasties. They like to invite their friends in and have a nice party. Yeah. So I had a sort of a similar indoctrination to my chronic illness. Only mine's a bit more recent than yours. And I thought I had a virus or a flu or something because I just felt awful. And I was one of those people before that never got sick, got the occasional cold, never got sick, never went to the doctors. So, yeah, I just thought I've got this really lingering 6-week virus or something. And it started from there with my journey.
Wow.
So, wow. So you must have been pretty young.
I was 23. Yep, I was 23 when that flu happened. Yep.
Yeah. What was the hardest part for you, Kacy, emotionally, coming to terms with all of that?
I think that my life as I knew it was over. Not my life was over, just so I'm clear, but the life that I knew was over. And because I had tried for years fighting to get that life back. I liked that life. I liked my abilities. I was a dancer for 17 years. I wanted to get back there. And so I was trying to fight for so long to get back or reclaim what I had. And I think it took me, I would say, because I'm super stubborn and strong-willed, it took me 7, 8, 9 years to really come to terms with, okay, Kace, there's a new life that you can build, but that old life is old. There's a new one, and I need to let it go. So that, and also I think just coming to terms with how I lived my life and how I approached things and what I could do and what I couldn't do. And that was so hard. Like I wanted to be able, if my friends were going hiking, I want to go, or I want to be involved in this. And so being really isolated, especially at the height of the illnesses, was super hard emotionally, because I'm very social. I'm like a social introvert. I love being social, but I need my downtime. But all of it was downtime. All of it was introvert time, and it was not good. So those things were the hardest to really cope with at the beginning and through several years. Yeah.
Yeah. I felt the same experience, that the life that I knew was over, like the me that was before I had that was no longer. And accepting that was the hardest part. And I think it's still an ongoing process.
It totally, I agree.
Like even a day by day, week by week, like I'm having days recently, I think my healing has reached like a different level where particularly emotionally and mentally, I feel more focused, more switched on, more motivated to do things now than I have in, I don't know when.
Oh, good.
And so I have that and I enjoy that. And then if I have a slow day, it's almost like I go through a little grief.
Oh, yeah.
And you go into fear and you think, oh my God, was that just an anomaly? Is this now back to normal? You know, was that just a little glimmer of, wow, you're going to have a great, you know, fantastic day? So it's that ongoing management of having days where I think, you know, I feel fantastic, really fantastic. And then by the time the afternoon hits, I go, oh yeah, there it is. There it is.
What you say though is so true. It's so true. I think for all of us, we're kind of gripped by the fear. Like we have good days. We're like, uh-oh, did we overdo it? Or is it going to come back? Or yes. So it is a little bit of a constant grieving.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
And it certainly keeps you in the present moment if that's where you can put your focus. And I know that's mindfulness and, you know, gratitude and all of that has been a huge thing for me, that, you know, I can, like I'm sitting here now and I'm as well as I am and I'm talking to you and I'm really happy about that. And do you think, Kacy, if people get too attached to wanting that past self back, like I want that life, I want to be exactly the way I was before, do you think that causes issues?
Oh yeah, I think that's a huge obstacle and roadblock for people dealing with this, that you're actually putting in your own way, and because you're fighting for something that is no longer. And I think what I needed to do was, for me, instead of fight so hard to get it back, was just to be able to grieve and allow myself to just really grieve. And grieve all the losses that came and all the things that were gone. And there's still times that I grieve. I had one child, but like kind of during some of my illnesses, but I'm too, like I'd be too high risk to have another one. And I'm like, I don't want to pass on these genes. But I think it's important because yes, you totally put your own roadblocks in the way, and you don't think you are. You think you're doing the right thing. I'm fighting, I'm trying to get back, but it's actually the surrender and the grieving that helps you move forward into a new life and a new chapter, I think, from what I've gone through, because it did not do me any good to fight. It only did me harm.
Yeah, and I think I can remember that too. Just, I think it's part of the denial process, because when you get given a life sentence, which is, you know, somebody says, this is what you've got this, you got that, it's not going to go away, that's why it's chronic, you go into denial. You know, there's many stages of denial. And I think the one that I felt the strongest initially was, you know, I'm going to beat this.
Yes.
I'm going to be the one person. I'm going to think my way. I'm going to, whatever it is, I'm going to be completely free of this. It's not going to exist in my life, and all of that. And I think that lasted about 9 months. And initially it was good because it made me really focused, and because that was the height of my illness, I was doing that. So it got me really focused. Like I changed my diet, I did all of these things. But after a while, I just had to surrender and just say, well, this is going to be what it's going to be. There's only so much I can do about that. And that, yeah, there was a lot of grief to unpack in that.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So hard. So hard.
And what positive changes or insights do you think you've had, Kacy, that have been a direct result of your illnesses?
I always say my illnesses are the best and worst things that have ever happened to me. I would never want to learn the lessons I've learned because, like this way. But I think it unmasked a lot of masks I was carrying and a lot of false beliefs I had about myself, about others, and spiritually about God. And I didn't know that they were there. But when all of my work, and I didn't know my worth was so placed in what I could do. And I think the best thing for me is my illnesses got to the core of me, and it brought up all this stuff that I had no idea was there. And for years and years, it was super hard. And I went through intense counseling, EMDR, emotional stuff, spiritual counseling, codependency, but all this stuff came up and I dealt with it. And I am so grateful because if it wasn't for my illnesses, I think I just would have been plowing through life without ever knowing. So I think getting to the core of who I am and addressing those negative beliefs and all those different things and the traumas and the various different things that have happened is the best thing. So I'm so grateful for my illnesses in that way. That's the biggest positive I think I'd say. I wish I didn't have to learn it that way,
Yes.
but I'm glad they have taught me some really lessons that are going to carry with me, always.
And that's credit to you that you were able to approach it that way. Because I think there can come many sink or swim moments with chronic illness. And I know I had many long nights of the soul, particularly when I was going through the anxiety stages, just that rolling anxiety that would take me over, and feeling so sick and so dependent. And you're going from being a very capable, strong woman, who looked after the family and did everything and worked and all of that, to someone, whose best day was going from the bed to the couch.
Yes.
And not knowing if that was going to get any better. The uncertainty, I think, was the biggest and most fearful thing for me, is just that there was no real answers. And the doctors that I initially spoke to trivialized what I was experiencing anyway. Just, you've just got to get used to your normal. Just take your tablet and you'll be fine, all of that sort of stuff, which was very different to what I was feeling. And I was feeling that my life had been ripped away.
Yes.
So I think in those moments you can either sink to the bottom,
yes,
and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a necessary part. But eventually when you're ready to start reaching for something more, then I think it really is time to look inside and say, okay, what needs to change from within? What's not working in my life? What's happening in my relationships? How am I in relationship to myself and my concept of God or spirit or whatever you want to call that? And it can be a real call to action to get really right with yourself and right with the rest of the world.
Yes, so true.
But it takes guts and courage. So yeah, as you say, terrible way to learn it, but I think everybody's got to sort of go, wow, look at me, I'm willing to do this. I'm still willing to do this work in the face of all of these obstacles. And I think that takes great strength of character. And 13 years, Kacy, I've got to hand it to you. That's a long time. I'm just under 2 years in and I'm still
It's a lot. I give you lots of credit because I was still in the deep, dark pit several years in. I mean, I was in it, and just, so yeah, it's taken me, like I said, I'm stubborn and I'm strong-willed. And so it's taken me so long to get to this place, and a lot of hard work and a lot of intentionality. But I'm glad I walked through it, as hard and painful and as much as I didn't want to sometimes. I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did, because I'm healthier, mind, body, soul for it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think my belief is that, I don't know what's possible for me. I could be, in 10 years' time, be the best, most healthiest version of me than there's ever been. And, I don't know what's going to be possible. So I just imagine that it's going to be wonderful if I keep looking after myself and doing the work, and just you've really got to look after yourself like a very precious person. And I think that's
So
important.
true. So true. Yeah.
So with 13 years, you must have seen a lot of doctors. And what advice, Kacy, could you share, looking back now, about dealing with the medical profession that was the most helpful and empowering for you?
I would say I learned from my own mistakes and kind of trusting I will call it the Western medical community. They're not bad people. They're great people. And I rely on them heavily for certain things. But I just kind of went in going, well, you're the doctor and you should tell me what to do. And that's just what you do. You go to the doctor because you don't know what's going on, and they should tell you, and they should be able to fix you, and you trust them and you go on your way. And now I'm like, I think it's so important to research and be knowledgeable and to walk in and have questions and speak up. I would say my key number one thing is what I always tell people is speak up, because there's that intuition we have, and especially if we're doing research and we're talking with other people or we're online and kind of finding things out, just let it out and speak up, because you are your only advocate. You know, God bless the doctors, but they don't have all the answers, especially with any chronic illness. They just don't. And so speaking up and making sure, you know, this happens even at my naturopath's appointment. She'll say, hey, Kacy, you know, here's a list of all these things I want you to do. But then I'll go, do I take it at night? Do I take that in the morning? When do I stop doing that? Like, just ask the questions. And that's super duper important. Yeah, is being your own advocate and speaking up.
For sure.
Yeah.
You've really got to be able to do that. And it can't be a passive process, because if you're in that passive, you know, fix me stage, you're going to stay in that victim mode.
So
and it's a hard one to break out of, because, you know, I'm 56, nearly 57. So, you know, doctors like from my mother and my grandmother were like gods. You know, they knew everything, and you did not argue with the doctor. The doctor just would tell you, and you did what they said you would do. And luckily, I've always been a bit outspoken.
Good.
Which has served me well in this, yeah. And I knew when I saw my first doctor, when he knew so little, like he knew nothing about my illness. You know, he sent me off when I really should have been in hospital. I knew if I stayed and left myself in his hands, I would probably die.
Wow.
I knew it was up to me to find a doctor, you know, to do my research. Even in my most brain fog state, you know, while I was sitting on the couch, that was all I was doing. I was listening to every podcast, and I was on every webinar, and I was reading everything that I could get to go through my mind. It was just, you know, in here somewhere there is some way to help myself, and I know I have to help myself. You know, my job at the time was just to keep myself alive long enough to find a way to help myself. And it was that determination that got me through. But I must say that determination was driven by fear. It was driven by fear.
Yeah. So, and there's so many times too when I was even, I had an acupuncturist one time advise me to do this cleanse, and he wrote down how to do it and what to take and how to do it. And I just didn't feel right about it. And I was doing research and I looked it up, and he accidentally prescribed 4 times the amount of what I should have done, which would have been lethal. And I like, so even well-meaning people that are just good and great doctors, it's like you've got to follow up on it, and you've got to make sure it sits right, because we're sensitive. Like I have all these different sensitivities, and I react so differently. And yes, the fear does drive. It's like, hey, I want to have good days. You know, I don't want to be down for the count.
No, I have multiple sensitivities as well, and so I like a really anal label reader. So it doesn't matter what my naturopath or my doctor gives me. You know, I'm going to look at it and say, yeah, and if that's got that and that, I can't have it. Find me something else. You know, if you're going to prescribe me something, it's got to be free of this, 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 and this, and that's the way it is that we find a workaround. But I think it's really important that everybody sees it as it's a relationship. you have a relationship with your doctor, and you might only see them for 10 or 15 minutes,
Mm.
but it needs to be a two-way street. And if they're not listening to you and they're not respecting you, as daunting as it can be to keep going from doctor to doctor to doctor, and as you know, you've got to keep going and find someone who will listen, because at the end of the day, we're the people who are going to live the experience of what they're handing out. You know, whether it's for better or worse, they're not going to have the side effects. They're not going to have the lack of energy, and they're not knowledgeable about chronic illness. So one of the things that I was reading when I was researching an article for my blog was that because doctors don't know how to deal with chronic illness because it's something they can't fix.
Right.
It's like anything. I know this as a counsellor. You get empathy burnout when there's nothing you can do, like for somebody. Say you've got a friend who's really depressed, and you can't help them, and they're so down, and they can't help being that way. That's their experience. But you want them to change because it's so uncomfortable seeing them that way, that in the end you start avoiding them. And the same thing happens with doctors when they've got a patient going, I'm exhausted, I'm anxious, and they've given them everything that they know of. Then they put the patient in the hypochondriac basket. So
devastating.
Exactly. So tick the boxes.
Yes. I mean, I'm glad we live in our day and age, because more and more, like, can you imagine just 50 years ago, it was like, oh yeah, you go to the nut house because you've got mental health problems for legitimate health issues that just weren't discovered yet. And unfortunately, there's that stigma still, but thankfully we're moving in the right direction. That I'm like, gosh, yeah, if I lived even 50 years ago, where would I be? Or, you know, or how would I be, you know, categorized by the medical community? Scary, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And particularly thyroid issues, because of, you know, as somebody who deals with anxiety, and I overcame anxiety and panic attacks from my teen years and my early 20s. So I knew how to deal with anxiety. I have lots of very tried and true methods to deal with it. But the anxiety and the emotions I was experienced with chronic disease because of the inflammation and the inflammation that was happening in my brain, I am sure there are people in mental institutions who have just been wrongly diagnosed when they have a physical illness that's affecting their mind.
It's so sad to think about, isn't it? It's heartbreaking.
For sure. So having an illness, has that changed the way that you feel about your body, Kacy?
Oh, yeah. I would say in a physical aspect with hidradenitis, getting boils over your body in spots where you don't want boils, on a physical aspect, that is very hard. That's still hard for me to be okay with. And so, but I used to get so angry with my body, Carrie. I mean, why can't you perform like you used to? Why can't you do what you do? And so I've come a long way, because now I can view my body now as not the enemy, and as a messenger, and as it's giving me messages, and it's brought me so far. And it's done so much good for me. I mean, if I sit in that long enough, I would just cry and weep and be grateful for my body, because it's gotten me this far, and I don't know how. I mean, I've been on my deathbed and in the hospital so many times. Like, I'm just so grateful that it's gotten me this far. And it took a big shift for me to go from the enemy to the, oh, thank you, messenger. But that was a long journey. I'm glad I'm where I'm at. But yeah. So definite relationship issues with my body from time to time, but a lot more of accepting it and really being grateful for it.
So could you share with us, what was your worst moment? Like when you said you'd been on your deathbed in hospitals many times, what was the worst for you?
I would say for me, it was when I was having, and they didn't know it, I was having an adrenal crisis. And so I needed hydrocortisone, and I went to I couldn't function for weeks. I mean, breathing was laboring. I couldn't go to the bathroom by myself. I couldn't sit up to eat. And so I went to doctors like, oh, you just have a virus, or you have a bacteria, take some antibiotics. and it just didn't ever get better. And so I ended up in the hospital, and the emergency room, the doctor told me at the end, he said, I actually thought you had leukemia from everything you said to me and how you looked. But he goes, all your tests are fine except some of your endocrine ones. But they don't, in the emergency room, at least when I was there, they didn't test me for adrenal failure. So that's scary. That's scary to know that, I mean, and so I was there, they released me. I ended up slowly getting better. The only way I got better is I found this little, it's called the Migun bed, M-I-G-U-N, and it's like a roller bed. Like you lay on it and it rolls, it's like jade hot rollers, and it massages you. And it was able to stimulate some of my organs, because at that point, we were living in Colorado, we're in California now. I wasn't doing any natural stuff. I had just started eating gluten-free. You know, this was like, you know, this was a new concept. I don't know, I'm sure paleo was around, but I didn't know about it. And definitely autoimmune paleo was not around. So this was like the only natural thing I was doing. I would lay on that bed twice a day, and it was able to help my organs kind of heal a bit from it. So that's my stuff. Anytime I end up in the hospital, it's normally because of adrenal issues, adrenal failure or collapse.
Yes, so, and that's one of the, should be one of the 7 pits in hell, I think, adrenals.
Oh my gosh, right?
It's
those adrenals.
It's very, very scary and unpleasant, and it takes a long time and lots of patience. And then you get a stress, you know, external stress, and I can feel my cortisol just go, bye. And I'm like, come back. Like, no, I'm gone. I'm gone. You'll have to wait now.
And that's what it basically is. It's like, it's gone, and then you just have to wait. You're like, hopefully I'll get you back and take care of myself.
Exactly. So what would you most like people to understand about your illnesses and what you're living with?
I'm going to answer this question in 2 parts. I think for me, I'm going to answer it for me, and I think I'm going to speak for the chronic illness community, is that we have a lot to offer, and we've learned a lot, and we've been through a lot. And I think society kind of pushes us over here because we're not valuable or whatever. So I think we have so much to offer and to give, and the perspectives we've been given, and just life chronically ill is, and I know I say this weird, is a precious thing for society to know and to have the empathy and to experience. So I would want people to give me the time of day and try and understand my perspective and what I've learned, and being willing to listen to my journey and what I've learned. That'd be my biggest thing. I always wanted people to truly understand me, Carrie. Like, and so I would tell him like even my husband, I would tell him every single symptom I had all the time, hoping he could just understand. And now when people go, oh, Kacy, I don't even understand, I'm like, thank God you don't. Thank God you don't. I don't need you to fully understand. I don't need your opinion, whether you think it's a valid thing or not. I just need you, and I need you present, and I need you listening. So that's what I've kind of ditched the wanting people to understand everything that I go through, but just being willing to listen and embrace our chronically ill society. There's so many of us now, and we have a lot to give.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing for me is, I was talking about this with one of my clients the other day, and she was sort of stuck in that wanting her parents to understand what she was dealing with, is that they would just get it.
I know.
And so we talked about that quite a bit, and just the futility of that. What the bottom line is for you and me and anybody else with a chronic illness, it's not that important that they understand, because they're not going to understand truly until it happens to them. That's the only way they're really going to get it. What's important is that they understand and respect our boundaries.
Yes.
So when we say, I can do that, but I can't do that, or I can give you this, but I can't give you that, or that's not going to be able to happen, or I can't eat the food you're offering, where they have to support us. That's where they have to stand up and go, I get it, okay? If you're saying it, yeah, I'm going to support you. That's where we need the support.
So true.
In our self-care. And when we say no, or, you know, I know somebody with celiac disease, and when she goes to her children's house, they will not make a concession for her. And because she won't speak up, because she doesn't want to upset them. So she eats their food and she goes home, and that sets her into a flare for weeks.
Oh,
so it's so important that you have your boundaries, and that's what you've got to get your family to understand. You know, I'm not saying this just on a whim. I'm saying this because this is going to have a profound effect on how I live my life. And that's what I need you to understand.
Yes.
So, Kacy, what changes have you made to your life? And you must have learned a lot over the past 13 years to help you create better health. And what change was the most challenging for you?
Ooh, I think taking care of myself, because in my former life, it was like my health was totally on the back burner. I ate fast food. I actually just ran across not that long ago a list. I was working at a company that offered a free personal trainer, and he had me write down my food list. And it was like I ate 3 things in a day. It was like potato chips, tortilla chips, and a cappuccino slim fast, and a piece of chocolate. I'm like, that's all I ate all day. And I went to bed at 3 in the morning and woke up at 7. And I was like, I was looking at it horrified. Like, oh my gosh. So I think taking care of myself, that was hard for me to like take time, eat, invest in food, because we all know that that ain't cheap. And invest in, I do like muscle testing and nutritional therapy, investing in a good naturopath. That was hard, because when I made those decisions to do that, we were in a horrible financial place. Horrible. And so it was like, we either go in debt or I take care of myself. It was like either or. And debt is going to cause stress, but me not being well is going to cause stress. And that was a really huge challenge for me. But I got to the place where it's like, I can't do this. Like I'm on the couch. I was in bed for two or 3 years. Like I can't do this. And I got to do whatever I've got to do in order to hopefully have the investment pay off in the end. So that was the most challenging, was really investing in my health and taking the time for my health, because that wasn't something I did. Yeah. But I'm so much better for it. I'm glad I did. Yes, we went into debt. Was that fun? No. Am I happy about that? No. But it is what it is. And I'm glad. I would have actually started doing stuff sooner if I didn't have the guilt of, oh, I can't do it, or we can't. And now I look back, I'm like, oh, I should have done stuff sooner. I should have done stuff sooner.
Yeah, so it's those priorities, and your priorities really have to change, don't they?
Oh, yeah. It's night and day. It's night and day from what it was. Yeah.
So have any of your relationships changed as a result of you becoming chronically ill?
All of them. Yeah. I got married. We've been married or together about 12 years. So he was kind of at I met my husband kind of at the beginning. I was still working full time, but like panic attack, adrenal issues, didn't know what was going on, getting sick all the time. But it was like, oh, the doctor will give me a pill and I'll get over it. So he kind of went into our marriage thinking, well, you're going to get better. And so I think our relationship went through, we've gone through some hell and high water times. Just horrific times. But like I said, kind of at the beginning, it helped kind of unmask and get to the core of both of who we were. And we realized through my illnesses and me being so dependent for so long, we got all enmeshed and we got all weird, and our boundaries were all weird. And so we've been able, he's done some deep work, I've done some deep work, and we've been able to kind of be like, that's your side of the street, that's my side of the street. But that, thank God, we've put in that work, because my illness is, it could have blown up that marriage big time, and how I was handling it and what I was doing, not just the illnesses itself. And then obviously with friends, I used to have a lot of friends, and now I just have a couple. I have a few that are tried and true. They've known me before illness, after illness. I picked up some other friends along the way. But you know, when you can't always be involved and do stuff, and you kind of drop off the radar, unfortunately, and it's so sad. But now I have my friends that are true. They are true. They don't care. If like I call last minute, I'm like, I can't come because I just can't function. They're like, all right. They love me. They don't harbor any resentment against that. And I think also my familial relationships with my extended family, that's changed a lot, because I mean, I'm not the daughter or the sister that they kind of once knew. And I can't always participate in family events. I can't eat at that. I can't go to that. And that can be a disappointment. And so, yeah, working through all of those challenges. I mean, obviously chronic illness affects everything, especially relationships. So yeah, across the board, it's affected everything. But I think working through all the stuff and taking the time to work through it all, I think all relationships are so much better for it now. But yeah.
Yes, they can become deeper and richer. I think it really depends on how much energy you've got and
Right.
how you're prepared to go into it. And I think one of the best things it'll teach you is who's real and who's true and who's false. And who needs to go. Yeah.
You gotta
and getting rid of, you know, as much stress as you possibly can.
Yes.
That can be stressful in itself, you know, having to set boundaries and having to say no to people and all of that sort of stuff. And, you know, if you've got people in your life who are emotionally manipulative or toxic, you just cannot afford to let them keep draining you.
Yep. But it's so good. I think like if you put that energy in, and if you're able to put some boundaries and almost retrain people on how to interact with you, it's that short-term stress, because it totally is. It's that, because it's like, ugh. But it's such a long-term gain. So if you can muster that up, so good.
Oh, for sure. And, you know, we teach people how to treat us by what we're willing to tolerate and accept. And that's part of that. When you say retraining, it's absolutely true, because you have the opportunity to teach people how to treat you by what you're willing to accept and what you're willing to tolerate. And if you're tolerating a lot of stuff, go let it go. So, Kacy, what advice would you give the partner and family of someone who's just been diagnosed with your illnesses?
I love that question, because I think the partner and family sometimes are the forgotten ones. I would say in two different aspects of this, I would say listen to the person who's chronically ill. Try and be as patient as you can. We did not choose this. This is not our choosing. And we have a lot we're processing. We have a lot we're grieving. We have a lot we're going through. So just kind of like I said before, I don't need you to believe me. I don't need your opinions. I just need you. And so I would say ask them to be as present as they can and just as empathetic and understanding as they can. And then I would also tell them, make sure you maintain your hobbies. Make sure you maintain your friendships and your support system, because illness can overwhelm the family dynamic real quick. And because it's all encompassing. And so a lot of times the person that's kind of a caregiver or helping can just get swallowed up into that. And I think they need to maintain their selves and their hobbies in their life and getting the support they need. That would be my advice.
And I think, you know, if you're caring for someone with a chronic illness or a family member, if you can go and get therapy, because you really need support. You really need somebody to talk to, because it's really hard watching somebody you love become chronically ill and go through what they're going through. It's a massive drain emotionally and physically, and can cause so much resentment and so much frustration. So, you know, if you've got somebody outside that circle to vent to, and to get some practical help and help you, you know, release some of the stress and say the things that you feel that are in your heart that you need to say that is not appropriate to say to the person. Really, really important, because everybody needs support during that time.
Yeah.
So last question, what is the one thing that you've done that has made the biggest difference to how you feel and live now?
Ooh. It's hard to say one, Carrie, because I so view illness as like this big old jigsaw puzzle that has all these different pieces. So even if this piece is huge over here, if there's still a gaping hole here, the puzzle is not complete. So it's hard. I mean, obviously food is a big thing. If food is going to trigger you, that's a huge thing. But I just think all of the layers of the emotional and spiritual layers that go with it is equally as important. Obviously food, you're going to eat it 3 times a day, if not more, as you're snacking. So obviously that just by sheer, volume is the largest part. But I think synonymously these different pieces need to be working together at the same time. So I don't know if I totally answered that. I don't know if I think there is the biggest piece. I just think it's a lot of these pieces working together.
Yeah. And, you said, as you said before, just taking that responsibility and making that commitment to yourself can be the hardest.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think that drives everything, doesn't it? Just that commitment to yourself to say whatever it takes. That's what I'm going to do.
We're worth it. I'm worth it. You're worth it. We're worth that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. Practicing the art of extreme self-care is something that is so profoundly important.
It's an art form.
It is. It is. So, Kacy, how can people find out, more about what you do and how can they contact you? Just tell us a little bit about what you do with your blog and how you can help all the people out there.
Sure. You can find us at sistersundercover.com. And I say us because I work with my sister. She's got multiple sclerosis. And so we're like an autoimmune disease family. And one of the things that we're super passionate about is bringing good products to the forefront, whether it's food, beauty, or home kind of products, and showing what's kind of in line with our beliefs and what's okay. Because anybody in this day and age can go, we're organic, we're natural. And you look at it and you're like, no, buddy. So we investigate products. We go to companies locally in Southern California that do paleo stuff or in line with our mission. We go see how things are manufactured. And we also create recipes, but then we also talk about our journey, our experiences. The emotional and spiritual aspects of autoimmunity, hugely important to me. So I share my journey and my sister shares hers. So we just share kind of everyday life. I like to say we keep it real in the hood over there. We are so just on the journey. We don't claim we're experts. We're just here and we're sharing what's working for us and the things that we have found, because we really, with chronic illness, it's like you feel like you have to reinvent the wheel on everything. And that's so hard when you don't have the energy and all of the stuff that's involved with that. So we try and, not have you reinvent the wheel. We've already done it for you. So you can find us on Instagram at Sisters Undercover and Facebook, Sisters Undercover. You can always reach out to us via email, sistersundercover@gmail.com. We are building a really awesome community and we'd love for you to be a part of it and just reach out.
Fantastic. And I think it's such an important part of this because as you said, chronic illness can be a really isolating experience. Particularly at the height of the illness where, you can't get out and it's hard to find support. And that was what I was most yearning for. And that's why I started doing this, because I wanted to hear how people dealt with, like, how did they deal with the day-to-day? How did they get their mindset working? How did they deal with the emotions? How did they deal with the grief, of living this new life? And I think the more of us that tell that story, like as you said, we have so much to offer. We have so much to offer the world and the community and everybody in our lives because of what we've learned going through this experience. And, there's no need for us to be invisible. And there's no need for anybody to feel shame or blame about the conditions they're living with because we didn't cause it. We don't deserve it. We're people living life the best that we can. So the more that we talk about it, the more that those people who are feeling isolated are going to be able to say, well, if they've been able to change something, or if they've been able to find a positive, or they've been able to take some control in their lives and, you know, start getting their health back in their hands, well, that is fantastic, because that's exactly what needs to happen. We've got to sort of break this stigma of this shame about having chronic illness.
Amen, sister. Amen. So true, right?
Virtual high five across the screen.
Yep.
Well, thanks so much, Kacy. It's been fantastic talking to you, and looking forward to seeing what you and your sister come up with next over on Sisters Undercover. And I'll look forward to sharing some more stories with everybody in a couple of weeks. And I've got some fabulous people lined up, just like Kacy, for you to talk to. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And I'll see you later. Bye.